Hello again, everybody. Thank you for joining us on another edition of Spincast. Today, we have a representative from Newberry College, just to the south of us. We have one of the head coaches and coordinators for their esports program. His name is Terrence. Hello, and how are you doing today?
I'm good, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time. We sincerely do. So we'll just dive right into it. If you could just tell us a little bit of background, a little bit of backstory of who you are, how you got started in esports, and how it got you to the position you're in today as the head coach at Newberry College.
Absolutely. Pretty easy story for me. Definitely not the traditional esports background, if you will. Born and raised in Southern California, did undergrad at San Diego State, joined the military shortly after graduation. Was an active duty Air Force officer for about 8.5 years before separating active duty. What kind of led me to esports was my last assignment on active duty at the United States Air Force Academy. We had an athletic director at that time who was huge into the idea of getting esports started at the academy, for the fact that we would have been the first program at any military service academy to have an esports program. So running with that idea alongside our chief information officer, he and I developed the first esports club at any military service academy. So I was approached by some of the students along with the chief information officer about, hey, what is this esports stuff? We already got a kind of a club, but not really. We want to compete with the Air Force logo. And so sure enough, the chief information officer and I, we did all the groundwork we needed to do in tandem with the Mountain West Conference, and boom, there you go. First club team in Military Service Academy history. Did pretty good things last school year in the Mountain West Conference. I know they did big and better things this year after I left, but that's kind of what led me to Newberry. Newberry was looking to get a program started. They were looking for someone with a little bit of experience in esports, but also with a little bit of experience coaching. So that's kind of where I came in. I had a little bit of that coaching experience with the Air Force team, and too much playing time, if you ask me, and probably my parents. But like many other students that got started in traditional sports, a lot of our time when we were either recovering from an injury or just resting, or it was too dark outside, we couldn't play anymore, we found ourselves playing esports, playing video games. Back in my day of undergrad, definitely couldn't get scholarships like they can now, but hey, I'm more than happy to offer those that are talented enough and looking to further their education.
Awesome. That's a cool story. So you came from, let me make sure I got this right. You left Southern California to come here. All right.
I did.
I'm just going to say you're going to miss that weather. Anyway.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, no doubt. So tell me a little bit about the program at Newberry. Are there multiple different games you play? Is it one? Are there multiple teams? Just the whole background, the whole scope there. What can we expect as a student if we were interested in going to Newberry? What do we have?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And I know I get it all the time from both parents, administrators, but as students as well. Every student hopes that I offer their game, right? Yep. Whether it be Super Smash Brothers, to FIFA, to NBA 2K, to Fortnite. I've gotten too many requests to even count. We kind of went with the most popular titles currently, with being that League of Legends and Overwatch, two of the most popular titles both in the public space, but then also collegiately. We decided to start with those two. We are in our first year and just completing our first year, a little shortened due to the circumstances of what the world's facing right now. And completely understand it. We want to make sure our students are safe and healthy, able to complete their education safely. Had to cut our season short, but that's all right. We'll get back to it when the government and health says we can get back to it. And we'll be offering 2 new titles once we get back into our esports space. We'll be adding Fortnite and Madden next school year to bring up our total to 4 teams. Pretty exciting thing. Both our incoming students, but as our current population, definitely have a huge affinity for both Fortnite and Madden. That's kind of what led us to adding those 2 less traditional titles as far as the collegiate esports space is concerned, but still very popular both competitively and in the public space. So we decided to add those 2, increase our team number to roughly about 23 to 24 students. it'll be exciting once we get our doors back open next school year.
Awesome. Awesome. And you're growing, obviously. You just doubled in size with 2 additional teams. That's pretty cool.
Right.
Talk a little bit about when things were a little bit more normal, probably back in the first semester of the fall of last year. Practice-wise, what's that schedule typically look like for your esports member on a day-to-day basis? You know, how often are they practicing? How often are they breaking down? They're probably scrimming against other schools, et cetera. Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. And very much like a traditional sport, we have an on season and an off season. Both League of Legends and Overwatch have their on season, if you will, in the spring. So a fall off season, we have practice a couple days a week, usually 2 to 3 at most, just so that way there's still plenty of time for academics, still plenty of time for socializing, things of that nature that get a little tighter once the on season comes. So we keep practices to 2 to 3 hours at most, with some scrims in there, like you mentioned, practice against other schools. We do have video reviews, so that way we can make sure we're putting into practice what we've been talking about in practice, being like, hey, we want to either execute this new strategy, or we want to try these new champions, or we want to work on these maps given what game we're playing. So students can look for about 2 to 3 hours a day when we are practicing, 2 to 3 days in the off season, 4 to 5 days during the on season period. We do work around academic schedules, of course, just like a traditional sport would, because, hey, at the end of the day, you're coming to a college or a university for that education to further benefit yourself going forward and set yourself up potentially for a lucrative career. So we do value that education. We make sure our students are going to class. We do have a minimum GPA requirement that students meet, being that 2.5 GPA. So parents out there thinking, I'm just going to lock them in the esports arena, they're never going to go to class and shirk all their academic duties. No, that's not going to be the case. Definitely put academics first, esports second, and making sure that they have that good balance.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point. There definitely needs to be that good balance. But I think the correlation is a misnomer, meaning a lot of people game. My son, my daughter, they game, right? They're home from school, so they're gaming even more now than normal. But my son, who's an avid baseball player, when they go and travel to a tournament, well, guess what he does on his downtime? He's probably gaming. It's a social outlet on top of a regular outlet, if you will, for what they do. But esports is different. Esports and gaming aren't necessarily the same thing. Esports is now, I'm vested in learning how to play this, and I want to be as good as I possibly can at this particular game. Just like a traditional sport. Man, when I played baseball, the only way I was going to get better is I had to practice that craft over and over and over and over and over again until I wasn't good enough to play anymore. So I would suspect it's a similar routine, obviously, there, because you mentioned something that caught my attention right away is scholarships. Talk a little bit about what you guys do from a scholarship perspective there at Newberry.
Absolutely. Scholarships, that is what many would say is one of the requirements of varsity esports, that they have that dedicated esports arena or space that both the students can practice and compete in. They have a full-time administrator, at least one of us, like myself, and potentially assistant coaches, other administrators that can help with both supporting the teams, but then, of course, the paperwork side of things, and then the scholarship piece. I know everyone's asking, well, when am I getting my full ride? I'd love a full ride. Oh, we'd all love to give full rides, of course, but we're not all quite there yet.
Yep.
We do supplement any academic scholarships that they receive, merit scholarships that they receive, grants, anything that is considered prior to them having to take any personal loans out, because we want to minimize that impact. We understand that higher education can be expensive. So we want to supplement that with the scholarship if and when they make that roster, full-time roster. Both the starters and the subs get scholarships. Obviously, that starter scholarship is going to be a little bit more than a substitute would get. But hey, at the end of the day, if you're telling me I get to practice with my buddies, get better at a game that I'm already passionate about, and I get money on top of it, where do I sign?
Yeah, no doubt about it. You bring up another great point. Practice with my buddies. Talk a little bit about the social aspect. Again, another misnomer is, again, gaming, my son's probably upstairs in his room just kind of playing with his buddies. Now, again, socially, he's interactive because it's online, things like that. But esports is different. It is a community. It's a team, right? There has to be a little bit more than just, hey, go to your dorm and we'll practice. I'm sure the setup's not like that. Tell us what the setup is like there at Newberry.
Absolutely. Newberry, I'm thankful for the facility that we have and that we were able to adapt to meet our needs. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But hey, this is a fantastic starting point for us to be at. We have 12, soon to be 16 high quality PC setups. So that way the students can practice as well as compete in that space. We can run multiple titles at the same time should our schedule require us to overlap a little bit. And that's the nice thing about it is that, hey, many think that, well, my student's just going to be locked up in their dorm by themselves and they're just going to be talking online with their buddies. No, it's not like that at all. Part of this esports space is that adaptive in-person communication, just like a traditional sport would have. It is way different when you see your teammates sitting next to you versus someone on a headset and they say something silly to you and you're just like, okay, yeah, whatever. Don't care what they have to say because it's negative, not helpful. But when you're sitting next to that person, you see them face to face, you can have that constructive conversation. You can be more helpful with your comments and talking to the team versus just screaming that can happen online that isn't so constructive, that is more destructive than anything. So helping our students get it more to that constructive feedback communication can help build that in-person camaraderie, but then also help them adapt to stressful situations both in and out of the esports space.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt. I think those things are critical, absolutely critical. And that's such an advantage to be able to go to somewhere like a Newberry for a young student to take advantage of those things that he's, as you mentioned, he or she's already passionate about. So that's fantastic. Kind of changing veins a little bit, who are some of your biggest rivals?
Well, we're brand new. So we, along with many other schools across the state, but then also across the country, we haven't really gotten a chance to build up any of those real rivalries. But if I had to call out one school by name, I'm calling out Lander for sure. Great program, great coach, great students. Absolutely enjoy scrimming against them. They're actually one of our more regular scrim partners in League of Legends.
Cool.
They love the shout out for sure, I'm sure. But great institution over there. I would consider them one of our rivals simply because they're close to us in terms of location, but then also skill level and experience. They are a relatively new program just like us. They're growing and learning alongside us. And so we love having the ability to see them grow, but also us grow, because when you start out with someone when you're both new, you can see how you're adapting. Are they growing faster than us? Are we growing faster than them? Are we going to have to create a new rivalry, right?
Right.
So I would definitely call out Lander for sure.
Cool deal. Well, now, logically, I'm going to have to reach out to them, show them this podcast and say, hey, what do you got for me? Cool deal. That's cool. Talk a little bit about, obviously you started with the Mountain West and now you've kind of gravitated towards here, brand new at this spot here, but obviously you've been doing this for a while. So when esports started to where it is today to potentially what you'd like to see as you move forward. Talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, NACE, the National Association of Collegiate Esports, we are a partner of that. Newberry is partnered with them, kind of have that governing body, if you will. We don't have the NCAA or any similar governing body that controls all of collegiate esports. Because no one owns the rights to soccer, no one owns the right to basketball, whatever it is, there isn't an individual or an interest group that says, well, no, you can't play our game like that, or no, you can't change the rules like that. So having the manufacturers and the title makers part of the conversation is huge. And NACE is able to leverage, hey, this is our body of 160 schools. We are interested in going this direction. What do you all as the title makers think? And so having that kind of voice in the room that can speak both institution, but then also business side of things is really nice. It gives us that leverage versus just being Newberry College. Yeah, Newberry College definitely has interest in how we proceed going forward in the esports space. But now when you take that collective of 160 schools, that voice is going to ring a little bit louder in the room. So we definitely appreciate what NACE is doing, and then there's several other esports governing bodies, if you will, out there.
Yep.
I'm very happy with how NACE is proceeding in this current environment, and I hope to see them grow going further because they don't regulate how our students make their scholarship money, nor when they win a tournament, our individual institutions get to determine how our students collect those funds. Versus an institution like potentially the NCAA would say, hey, you can't make any money. Right. Just like a traditional sport, you can't make any money off winning a tournament or your likeness or sponsorships or whatever it might be. So I appreciate that NACE is giving us institutions the individual power to say, hey, this is how we see our program growing going forward, and we're going to choose to allow our students to receive funds like this or like another direction. So I see a governing body going forward being the governing body, the NCAA of esports, if you will. Will it be here soon? It really just depends on who the title manufacturers decide to go with, or whether or not they decide that if you're playing our title, you have to go through this governing body. So right. We'll see. I don't want to speak on behalf of any of the title manufacturers for sure, but I hope that we can kind of become a centralized organization to give esports more of a cohesive way to operate.
Yep, no doubt about it. I think that's critical for every school that embraces esports at the collegiate level. If they can get governance by the same regulatory body, that consistency then permeates throughout, and it makes everything so much nicer. So hopefully, we'll see. But that's a whole separate podcast and talking about publishing and everything else. We need to set aside a few days for that. So ideally, I would love nothing more than to see kids take advantage of some of the opportunities at a Newberry, get into a esports position because they're already passionate about it. But let's talk above and beyond that, right? Eventually they graduate. Most people don't go pro, just like in any other sport. Most people don't go pro in those either. So what do you see? And again, this is taking more than just what you've seen at Newberry, but obviously in the past with the Mountain West and with the Air Force Academy, what you're able to help build there. When they matriculate, do a lot of these kids go back and work in this field, or do you see them kind of spread out all over the place?
It really kind of spreads out all over the place currently, just because that esports job, if you will, isn't quite the full market that many would think it is. Yes, there are plenty of media positions. There's coaching positions. Yes, if they're good enough to go professional in their esport, absolutely those positions are available. But as this esports environment grows and as it expands, more and more positions will become available because more and more industries will decide, hey, we want a piece of that esports pie. We want to have someone who knows what it looks like from the inside. So someone that competed at the collegiate level or professional level and say, hey, this was my experience. I see this as the way for this industry to get involved. Let's go. And so I would say it's probably about 10 to 20% at most currently, depending on the program, get involved in the esports space. But more and more, my students are like, hey, coach, how do I get involved in a position like yours or professionally? And I kind of help show them the way, show them folks that I know in the industry, but then also my path into the industry. And if this is where they want to go, and this is truly where their passion lies, both whether it be in the coaching realm or as a social media person or someone like a shoutcaster, something along those lines, I'm more than happy to help them find that avenue, because as these students come into the collegiate ranks and go on and go into the workforce, more and more positions will only open up. Because if you asked me 5 years ago, would I be coaching an esports team in South Carolina, I would have laughed and said, there's esports coaches? You got to be kidding me.
Very true. Very true. And just think of the last 5 years, how it's grown by leaps and bounds. Think of what's going to come up in the next 5 years. It's just going to be an amazing scene to watch kind of unfold in front of our eyes. So, well, Coach K, I think we are about up on time. But again, I really sincerely appreciate you coming on. Guys, Newberry College, check them out. Hopefully, we'll be able to circle back with you a little bit, maybe in the fall when things hopefully return a little bit back more to normal. I'd love to see how you guys are progressing. Love to see how Fortnite and your Madden teams kind of come into play, and maybe chit chat a little bit more on those topics as we continue to grow as well. So, Coach, thank you so much. I hope you stay safe. Hope you enjoy the rest of the day. And thanks for coming on. Stay plugged in.
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate your time. Thanks for having us.
Got it.